spacecraft was in fact a Gallifreyan time-traveling vessel, whose owner was the Doctor, a Time Lord of Gallifrey.
Where I got the idea from? That goes back a long, long way. I was in Doctor Who as the Cyber Leader, and that was 82, came on our screens, and I continued to be in it through the 80s. And as I worked on that character, I thought there must be a story that the Cyber Leader himself could tell. In the end, it didn't quite turn out like that. What it turned out to be was a big book about everything to do with the Cyber Leader and the Cybermen and the Cyber race. In fact, anything that you wanted to know about these beings but were afraid to ask.
Taking it to be a threat to the imminent invasion, the Cybermen attempted to destroy the unidentified object. Their missile did not hit its target, which yet seemed to vanish.
And I got together with Andrew Skilleter, and he's a brilliant illustrator, and we worked out how this book could come to be.
The Cybermen book was a huge achievement for me. I had a passion at the time for the Cybermen, and I really wanted to produce a book that was really special. And this is where, it was a meeting of minds with David, because he had the same vision, and I wanted to add this visual dimension that hadn't been shown before. And I'd started earlier with just the paintings for Cybermen and so on, but this was something a bit more special, and we got Jerry Davis involved and other contributors, and it's become a classic book. It was voted one of the most popular books, Doctor Who books of all time, and it's held its own, and there's a lot of people out there who have very great affection for it.
And I thought, because it was in 4 sections, I wanted to do something more with that material. And the second section was a way of bringing together all the stories that have ever appeared in Doctor Who, up to that time anyway, about Cybermen, to try and make some sense about what they were as a race, where they came from, what they were about, why we should be frightened of them. But if I took that section and cut it up into 4 parts, I could present it as 4 tapes. At the time, we had these things called music cassettes. And I thought that the idea behind that section of the book, which was that a long time ago, a race turned themselves into kind of the archivists of the galaxy. They started gathering information about all sorts of beings, and they had a series of large spaceships, really, space museums, in an arc in the sky. Each of these spaceships was a hive, we call them, like bees, busy bees, concerned with academic questions about what these races were, the history of them. And one of these hives would be the Cyber hive. And so the archivist, Hegelia, had brought together, this was the conceit of my second section of the book, everything that she could possibly gather about the Cybermen. All her colleagues had written, brought together hints, suggestions, documents, and there were in particular 9 audio-visual documents which had been found. Now, of course, this is a kind of joke, because we know that at that time there were 9 stories that had gone out on television about the Cybermen, and somehow these stories had radiated out across the hundreds of thousands of miles, across the light years, and had ended up being picked up by this race of archivists.
He and his companions landed in an English field, by coincidence, part of IE property, occupied by a domesticated species of Earth animal exploited for its milk, the cow. The Doctor decided to overhaul the TARDIS. An old friend of his, Professor Travers, belonged to this era and would be able to assist.
So that's how the ArcHive tapes came about in the early 90s. And then about 10 years later, the BBC came and said, well, it'd be nice to be able to do the origins of the Cybermen, which is the first of the ArcHive tapes. So they included that in a tin called the Cybermen tin, along with another couple of audio-only adventures of Doctor Who. And that did pretty well. But after that, people kept coming up to me and saying, well, when are we going to have all of them on CD? So I had other things to do and I didn't quite know how to go about it, but then the opportunity came up. And so that's what I've been working on in the past few months. And I thought this could be a kind of director's cut or a reimagining of what the ArcHive tapes were. Because we've got all this equipment now, we've got means of creating more exciting sounds, greater depth of sound, maybe greater longevity of sound. I thought I'd spend some time just opening it out and tweaking it a bit. And we're almost there.
When I was first approached to do the CD cover for the ArcHive tapes, I knew I wanted to approach it in a very different way. I'm now doing a lot more digital work. I'm mixing up traditional work with photography and digital ways of working, and which I enjoy very much. I enjoy the fact that I can manipulate so many different elements of these of the image and change and resize, colour, position. And so I approached this in that way. And David had the idea that we should have this, perhaps the idea of doors, a sealed door, very ancient, opening up, and inside, would be the history of the Cybermen. And so we went for a sort of distressed, metallic feel, and rust and metal and age, which I love to work with those surfaces. And it was a very, very enjoyable process to do.
As I was working on them, I realized that what we've got here is mythology. It's like Greek mythology, Roman mythology. This is Doctor Who mythology. And it's extraordinary richness of story. The way that the Doctor weaves his path through the universe, through time, keeps coming back to these terrible creatures, the Cybermen, who just want to take you over, make you emotionless. And yet they are timeless, I think, these stories.